It's a party going on right now. It says it's setting up your, oh, done redirecting. Okay. I think we're live.
I think we are too. Hi, everyone.
My goodness, how exciting. I'm always super excited when the technology works. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe it worked. It's like Gen X coming, I guess, out.
I know, I'm sort of that transitional age where some things feel really easy, but the tech changes all the time.
Well, also my expectations are so low. Like my boss brought me a candy bar, but I totally thought that it should have been like half eaten. Like, like just, hey, Gen X, your parents teach you, like don't make too high of expectations. Okay, so we are live and Art on Arkansas. I'm Scarlett Sims. I'm with the Arkansas Arts Council, and we have Virginia with us. And I was kind of hoping that you would introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background and talk to us a little bit about what you do, why you do it, and the new program that you are running.
Sure. Yeah. And I hope I touch every point. That's a lot of points. So if I miss anything, don't hesitate to let me know. My name is Virginia Siegel. I am the Folk Arts Coordinator of Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts, and we are a state folk arts program housed in university libraries at the University of Arkansas in the Division of Special Collections. And so every state has a state folk arts program in some shape or form. It's different in different states. In some states, it's housed directly in like the Arts Council or maybe the Humanities Council. In some states like Texas, it's a nonprofit like Texas Folklife. And here in Arkansas, we're one of several states where our state folk arts program is housed at a university. So this program has a long, or I should say, folk arts programs have a long history in Arkansas. Most recently through the hard work of Mike Lester with the Arkansas Folklife Program. But that program ended and then we had some period of time in the middle. So this is almost like a fresh start, but we're building on a long legacy of having a folk arts program in Arkansas. So I come to this position with a degree in folklore from Western Kentucky University, and specifically with a focus on working with the public. So in the world of folklore, there's if you go to school for folklore, you can specialize in public folklore. That's what we call it. So like public historian, right? Working with the public. And before I came here, I was the folklife specialist at the Kentucky Folklife Program, which is like Kentucky's equivalent. So I am not from Arkansas. I'm from off, as they say, but I adore it here. I felt a lot of similarities moving from Kentucky to here, especially in like how diverse the state is. Like in all four corners of the state, it's a completely different sort of geographic region, which comes with its own traditions and its own like landscape and environment and everything. So I have been here about 3.5 years now. Time is weird with COVID. So, but yeah, I'm not sure what I didn't hit, but
well, actually, I wanted to back up. I have lots of questions all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about folk art, but I don't think a lot of people might not know. I mean, maybe they do, but I don't know a lot of people know what that is or what the difference between folk art or maybe like crafts or traditional folk arts. Like, what are all of these categories, and what do they mean? Like, why are we bothering with preservation?
That's a really, really great question. So I should backtrack too and say Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts mission is to document, present, and sustain living traditional arts and cultural heritage in Arkansas. Sorry, my brain had like a brain fart. And so part of it is preservation of folk art and traditions, which I'll talk about in just a second. That's a great question. But part of it is sustaining living traditions as well. So for folklorists, the way we define, well, let me backtrack. There's some nuances between like folk art and folklore and all these things, but when I'm using it, folk art, tradition, folklore, I'm using them rather interchangeably somewhat. But at its core, folklore is those traditions that are shared in a community from person to person rather than like, learned in school or something, right? It's the things we learn from our community members from imitation, observation, just being part of the community. And so with that in mind, so like the key components of that definition are that tradition and is rooted in community. Tradition and folklore, I'm sort of using those interchangeably, is rooted in community. It comes from your community. You learn it in that community. And traditions are new and emerging all the time. So I think there's this tendency to think of traditions and folk art as like old or old-timey. And that is a part of it, but there's new traditions cropping up every day. And then on our website, I always say diverse, but universal. But what I mean is that there's all kinds of traditions. But what's universal is that every community has traditions. And sort of the key part of the explanation there is then how do you define community, right? So for us, a community is anywhere there is like a group that shares an identity. So that can be like the obvious thing, like geographic, maybe like an age cohort. Like there's a difference between like high school students, their culture is very different than like grade school students.
Actually, I was going to ask about that because you mentioned community, but learning something that not in a school, but where I'm from, school actually makes the community. Like a lot of towns, if they lose their school, then they dry up. Like that is actually, and that includes universities. That's like, especially in Arkansas, like universities, even the high schools and the middle schools, like those go away. So does the community. Those are integral. So I was kind of concerned about like, well, what does it mean if it's?
Well, so there's some nuance there. So say as a student, when you're going to school, there's a difference between something you learn in a textbook and something you learn from your peers, right? So you might learn something in a textbook, but then go out in recess and play a game of tag that is sort of a variant of tag we've been playing for generations in our communities. So that would be folklore. That's a tradition that's shared in communities. It's not like people hand out a piece of paper to tell you how to play tag. You learn it from your peers. So all of sort of the environments we move in, the communities we move in and out of have sort of different ways of learning. And folklore to me is exciting because it's the thing that we learn sometimes even without even realizing we're learning it. It's like the things we absorb as being part of and belonging to a community. And so that's age cohorts, but that's even like religious groups, clubs, like if you have an affinity for like dance, I don't just come up with something. If you belong to a craft community, it could be everything from like even in our jobs. There are things we learn in official training, but then there are things that we learn about how to do our job from our peers. So like the Library of Congress, for instance, is really big into the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress is really, really focused on collecting occupational folklore. The key thing for us too, then, as a folk arts focused organization is that it's basically like where there's a tradition that has some sort of skillful component. And that isn't something I decide as a folklorist, that's something the community decides, right? So like the community itself says, this is someone who's a really good baker. This is someone who's maybe not a good, or this is like, maybe not someone, but this is like an example of not being very good at making this kind of bread or something, right? So there, to me, I see that and I'm like, oh, see, there's a skill level there that's required to do something right, to do that tradition right. And so for me, that is an art. That's how a folklorist would see folk art, traditions that have some sort of skillful component. And so it's a very different definition than like the art museum world, which tends to see folk art as like naive artists. Or well, that's sort of an outdated thing, but you know what I mean? There's the idea of like an outsider artist or a naive artist, or they're self-taught. And actually outsider artists are kind of the antithesis, because that's sort of the assumption that someone just does something on their own. Where the way folklorists have defined folk art for, 100+ years is more about how we learn art in a community from our community members. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was kind of wondering if you could give us some examples of
Yeah.
things you've run into in Arkansas, because I know you go to organizations and talk, right? Talk to them, and communities and even individuals, and have communications with them. So what is it that, I mean, give us some examples of things you run into, maybe unique or funny or off the wall.
I'll tell you, my favorite event up here in Northwest Arkansas is the Pea Ridge Mule Jump. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, actually, very much.
To me, that's a folk art, because if you go there and you watch the mule handlers there's the method and a way of leading the mule up to the jump. For those who don't know, in Pea Ridge up here in Northwest Arkansas, every year they have a mule jump where it's they lead the mules up to a fence that gets progressively higher, kind of like limbo, right? And they see if the horse will, or the mule will jump it. And what's really cool is they don't force the mules at all. They just see how long a mule will keep going until the mule gives up. And oftentimes the competition's over because the mule is just like, nah, I'm done. But there's an art form to how you train and handle your mule, right? Oh man, there's just all kinds of stuff. I really enjoy going to the Ozark Folk Center. For instance, talking with Sean, their broom maker up there. He's a fantastic artist. The broom making world is pretty small in the United States. So, if someone wants to learn how to make a broom, they'll come to Arkansas to work with, the Ozark Folk Center and the artists there. So, so it's everything from material culture to the music and ballads. Ballad scene's very big here in the Ozarks. And then it's even down to like the foodways, right? So there's so many cool food festivals in Arkansas. Where is it that does this? Isn't it like Bentonville? It has a squirrel food festival or something too. I haven't gone to that.
What?
I haven't gone to it. I know. Well, you have to keep in mind, 1.5 years of my living here has been during COVID. So, I think the mule jump's my favorite, but there's all kinds of stuff. My brain's kind of like becoming like over, like there's too many options. So I'm having trouble even thinking of one. But again, for me, folk art is such a broad category. And if you think about it that way too, you start to see folk art everywhere you turn. I mean, the holidays are coming up. If your family, your family probably has a right or wrong way of decorating a tree, right? Your family's like, no, that's not how you decorate the tree. You have to put this first, the star first or the star last, the ornaments this way or this or that. Or
no, my mom just like
just throw it on.
Yeah. But it has to be her way. She does it. You're like, is this look? No, yeah.
That's its own tradition right there.
Know, right? But look, I'm in a chair, right? I mean, I'm at Heritage that was created by an Arkansas Living Treasure awardee and family. So that counts, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Definitely more classic example of folk art, right? I've been sort of thinking of some extremes to sort of get people thinking. Like even with the holidays, like if you bake cookies at home, the different recipes that are passed down in your family or traditions and are folk art because there's, a right and wrong way to do it. So,
right.
But yeah, the bump chairs, the Gibson family basket making family up here, Jerry Fisk, who helped found the Arkansas Living Treasure Award, and his knife making skills. I mean, those are all classic.
Which are still open. We're taking nominations until December 20th. Yeah, we have some. And I'm really kind of interested to see what kind of applications or nominations we get, because we've broadened that to include traditional folk art, which I hope will include like some sort of performing elements. So like reaching into communities maybe that we haven't before, hopefully. So
yeah, absolutely. because we have in Arkansas, we have a strong history of performance-based traditions too. I mentioned ballad singing, but I mean, gosh, folk arts, everything from calling an auction to calling a square dance, right? You know, I mean, if
Mhm.
you think about the state, there's so much here. Um, we've been really fortunate. We have 2 folk arts assistants right now. One, Nostalgia Alderson's wrapping up her work, but she's been doing an oral history project in Huttig, Arkansas. And then Lauren Adams Willette is our other folk arts assistant, and she's been trying to go like county by county to connect with different people who either organizations, artists, or maybe community tradition bearers that are involved in some way in the folk art world, just to make sure we're hearing from everyone. Like I said, we're a relatively new iteration of the folk arts program, so we're still growing. So we're really interested, to you all watching this, if you have like a tradition that you think is important and that we should know about it, or maybe there's a tradition bearer in your community who you're like, that person has all the stories, we need to make sure that their stories documented, right? We'd be interested in hearing about that, because I have to admit, a weakness of being up here at the U of A is we're so tied into the Ozarks that
Mhm.
I think people think we are only interested in the Ozarks, and that is not true at all. That is one of many parts of this state.
I have a off the wall question because
Yeah,
I grew up in the River Valley. We're not
yeah,
exactly Northwest Arkansas, but and we had a tradition every spring of picking poke salad so that you could eat in the winter.
yeah.
I want to know how many people have brought up poke salad or even that poke salad festival. Like, have
I
you
have
gone?
never heard it.
To get out more.
I well, again, COVID. Um, yeah, I know I do. But I also am a little, you can get overwhelmed because I can live
Yeah.
here for 20 years and still be learning things I don't know about. We need to talk about that. Can you tell me a little bit
Mm.
more now?
Yeah, and poke salad is a poisonous, toxic plant that grows in fields every spring, and you pull off the tops of it, put them in a Walmart sack, you boil them 3 times, squeeze out the liquid, put them in some Ziploc, and you can freeze them. Then you got to fry them up later. If you eat enough
Interesting.
of them, it will give you diarrhea. Sure enough.
Interesting. Last year was our first year. So again, we have a folk arts apprenticeship program, and that is not new to Arkansas, but last year was our first year, our version of the
Mhm.
folk arts program's first year. And just so you all know, that's open to any tradition bearers who are considered master artists in their communities and would like to work with an apprentice over the course of a year to pass on their tradition. And our first year, last year, we had a master artist with 2 apprentices who were learning about the production of sorghum, but then so not just how do you grow it, but then also what can you do with sorghum, different products you can make. It was really cool. Food waste traditions like that are absolutely important.
So, what are some other, are you collecting the data for like a database or like research papers, or what exactly are you gonna be doing?
Well, we can collect without a specific goal in mind, because part of our mission, like I mentioned, document, present, and sustain. So part of our mission is to grow our archive of documentation of traditions throughout the state. And our anything we collect will belong in special collections here at the U of A, which has a very strong and long history of housing folklore collections. So it's a logical home, despite the fact that we also are located there. But we we can document, and we do document, but I am also more interested in making sure that community members who are interested in self-documenting their own traditions have the tools and feel empowered to do that. That to me is also part of our document mission. We don't have to have it in our archive. I just want to make sure that people recognize the value of their traditions, and for those who are interested, honestly, the experts of Arkansas's traditions will never be me. It'll be the community members whose traditions they are, right? Those are the experts. So, sometimes we work with folks who want to give their documentation to us, but it doesn't have to be that way. So that's just one prong though. Document, present, we can do programming and exhibits and things like that as we grow based on the documentation that we've done. Like a small example really early on when we started up was collecting stories about different traditions with U of A's homecoming event. And then we did like an online website that you can get to from our website. That's just a small example, but the most important prong of our mission for me is sustain. And that is making sure that tradition bearers who wish, it's not up to me to say, we must preserve everything. Tradition bearers who wish to preserve and carry on their tradition have resources and tools to be able to do that. So I get people contacting me thinking we have like a list of artists, and we really, it's not like we're not trying to create like a definitive list of traditions and artists. We're here to be a resource to provide support to artists and tradition bearers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and do you guys work with other agencies? Like I know the Arkansas State Archives has books on folklore, but also like there's even a section on like dowsing. I don't know if you've run across that, and like Ozark superstitions and such.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, we actually had a dowser come to our property and for our well. That's how we had a well water. It was a dowser. So
Yep.
I just I didn't know. I run across a lot of people who don't know what those are anymore or what's going on. So I just wonder, like, is that the kind of thing you might collect, or is that too Arkansas State Archives like history thing?
No, that would certainly be something we could collect, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of organizations in the state who are doing work related to what we do, and we're not trying to like be like we're the all be all end all. We're sort of like a liaison through the NEA's opportunities and things like that. But we have a strong partnership with obviously the Arts Council, Arkansas State's Heritage Studies program, various museums around the state. Sorry, I'm like blanking. Ozark Folk Center, all these institutions that are doing really cool work in the state. And I'm hoping one of our future projects is to sort of solidify a bit more of like a network of folk arts related agencies, organizations, individuals, artists, that we can sort of have a network to support each other and get the word out about different events and sort of be able to sort of have a more cohesive feeling of like what's going on in folk arts specifically across the state. But
yeah, that would be really cool if we could do something like that, because
yeah,
I know we're wanting to expand the Arkansas Living Treasure program, and that would be really amazing if we could work together to kind of do similar types of things. Yeah, that'd be
absolutely. And yeah, dowsing, for instance, that is absolutely something that's the thing. Traditions, like, some of the most basic important things of our lives, we're so like they're so close to us, we don't see them as interesting or unique or worthy of documentation or discussion. So it's only like when you've been talking to someone, they're like, oh wait, we used to do this. Oh wait, we used to do this. Is that interesting? You know what I mean? But it's so much of our lives. That dowsing would fall under like a folk belief, right? Or you mentioned legends, storytelling, right? Which can be sort of the more formalized thing like ballad singing, but also there's like the legends and ghost stories we tell each other about, like hitchhikers or the ghost lights up here in northern Arkansas, those kind of legends. I always say it wrong. This is why I'm not a native Arkansan. The folk monster. It's
I don't know the folk monster.
FOUK. It's like a Bigfoot.
Oh, right. I forgot about him.
Yes.
I have a friend that keeps writing about him. Yeah.
That's folklore. I mean, that's absolutely folklore. I'm actually, apart from my job here, I'm the secretary for the International Society for Contemporary Legend Research, which is absolutely something folklorists are interested in. So.
So, did you, I know I said you could bring some examples. Did you have anything you wanted to share? Or?
Oh, I didn't actually bring it. Just, I have our website pulled up. I'd be glad to do like a little tour of that too, just to show you some of the things we're working on.
Sure.
Some of it, so you can see some examples. Kind of, it's less image based, but you can see some of the things that we work on. So let me pull up. Can you see my internet browser?
Yep.
Great. So some of our programs, so if you ever wanted to check out what we're working on, it's folklife.uark.edu. And among our programs, we have the apprenticeship program that I mentioned before. The Arkansas Folklife Network is a tab. Right now, it's really a Facebook page, but this is something we're hoping to turn into a more robust network. Our newest National Endowment for the Arts funded program is a community scholars training where we, if community members, if there's like a body of people in a community who would like to bring this training to their community, we will come to you and offer training on, what is folklore and folk art? How do we identify it? How do we document it? Okay, great, we've documented it. What do we do with that? What if we want to work with an archival institution, or what if we want to do it ourselves, right? Like both are okay. And how do we present the material that we found if we want to? Like everything from like small things like exhibits to like using social media platforms or bigger kinds of programs. So it's a really important program to me that it's offering. We have 2 communities signed up for this year, but we are welcoming, anyone who'd like to sort of get on our waiting list of communities to offer this training.
Do you mean this year or do you mean next year? Because we're in
2022. 2022. Sorry, this academic year. I get so confused being at a university. So in the spring, this is tentative. So, take it with things can change, but our hope is to be at the Eddie Mae Heron Center. We're working with staff there. And then in the fall, potentially working with the People's Library in Fox, Arkansas, which is co-led by Rachel Reynolds, who is also a folklorist, who is certainly one of my go-to people for Ozark folklore. So we have a community scholars program. We've got several oral history projects, the most important of which is our Documenting COVID-19 project, which since March of 2019.
No, 2020, right? It would have been March.
No,
2020?
we started really, really early in the pandemic. We started documenting. No, you're right. 2020, because it was.
Yeah, we didn't know. We got the first news out of China in October 2019.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So 2020. Oh my gosh, the years are bleeding together.
Time is a flat circle.
I just started properly putting 21 on my dates when I write my dates out, and we're about to be in 2022.
Yeah. I can't believe it's 2022. I read that and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old. I am folklore heritage.
Hey, you know what? Young groups have traditions too. So, but documenting COVID-19, that's open to anyone in the state who'd like to share their memories of what it's been like to go through the pandemic. This project is sort of predicated on the idea that it's better to collect now while the memories are fresh than wait down the road and try to go back and collect these oral histories. Because some of the things that are commonplace today weren't even commonplace like a year ago, like wearing masks, for instance, or things like that, right? Those are things we can see and it's part of our environment, but it was really strange at the start of the pandemic.
Have you, I'm looking at this, it made me think, Mosaic Templars Culture Center had an entire collection that they've been doing, COVID in Black. So is it like that kind of?
Yes, our focus is broader, but I've made sure that like when reporters reach out to us that they know about that one as well. Because again, we never try to be the end all be all. We just want to provide a vehicle. We normally do oral histories as part of our field work, but during COVID, it's not like I could go out and visit people and do oral history, especially when the pandemic first started. So we were kind of sitting there like, how could we use this skill set that our staff has? You know what, let's start collecting COVID experiences. And what's interesting is it's entirely relevant to folk and traditional arts because, suddenly really early in the pandemic, people were scrambling to reach out to people they knew who had a sewing machine or who could sew to create masks. We have a sewing circle up here, Loose Threads in Northwest Arkansas, that's made thousands of masks for community members. And they're normally quilters. And so everybody was learning how to bake bread. All these things that are very traditional activities were suddenly at the forefront in a really interesting, prominent way. So the other thing that's really interesting to folklorists is how we sort of use ritual as part of our traditions, and traditions of momentous events in our lives. And during COVID, you had entire generations of people who or entire sort of group of kids who couldn't properly walk for graduation. You had weddings and things like that where people were doing it differently, like having Zoom receptions and things like that. So these sort of important markers in our lives where we have sort of set traditions were changing too. So this oral history project is pretty relevant to what we do at Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts. So the other project is, for instance, Nostalgia Alderson's oral history project in Huddig. And the summer of the first year of COVID, our folk arts assistant Lauren also focused on gardening responses to COVID-19, like how communities were pooling resources to garden. Some people were gardening for the first time because they were worried about food scarcity. So we've just got, we have the ability to do projects like that. Oral history is one of our sort of bread and butter forms of field work. So yeah, we are always happy to partner with organizations and to just provide support however we can. And we can do online exhibits. Hopefully we can start moving into physical things like physical exhibits and stuff like that. Our big thing that we're working on right now too is our 2021 folk art survey. And that is headed by Lauren, who I've mentioned before. That first started as a small grant from Mid-America Arts Alliance, our first phase of this survey, but we've been able to keep Lauren on, and she's continuing, like that's what she was going state by state, making sure she can hear from people across the state. So if you'd like to participate in that too, you can certainly sign up to participate on our website. So our website doesn't have a lot of pictures, I'm realizing. I've had people complain about that. I should probably start splashing images of people doing cool stuff in Arkansas on our website.
People do tend to like pictures, just with, I had a marketing background, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So, well, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
Not necessarily. I'll think of something the minute we get off the call. Is there any questions on Facebook Live or anything like that?
Just a second.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay. No, but from Lauren, we will go see the hog butchering at Eddie May Heron Center in February.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's something we're looking for. I've never been. I think Lauren's been, but I'm really looking forward to that. So
yeah. And I know, let's see. So one of the things I did want to talk about is from what I'm gathering from what we've said so far, mm-hmm. the ability to perpetuate through either education or to a preservation or connect with communities. This has a direct tie to our identities as Arkansans and also within our communities. And that's kind of what makes it important. It's the placemaking and also individual person making, and community making. Am I okay?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the folklore, our traditions are sort of what forms our community groups, right? Those are the things we share with each other. And, each person has multiple sort of community, like memberships at one time, right? My family, but then my work culture, but then I'm an Arkansan, but then I'm, what I mean? Like it's layered. But the traditions are sort of, I think, Meredith Martin Motes, who's a folklorist working in the River Valley, I think she's the one who told me this. Zora Neale Hurston, who is a folklorist, by the way, called it the boiled down juice of living, I think was the term. But it's basically, I always say it's like the stuff that makes life worth living. It's like the way we form connections with people. I
mean, that's really interesting because, growing up I'm from Atkins, but like the River Valley area, like most of me and my friends and I, we were very much into getting rid of any of that identity, anything that had to do with how we grew up or anything to do with our families or school or communities at large. Like I really don't keep up with a lot actually even now, but I do remember being young and intentionally trying to strip that down and away and throw it away. Like, we did not want to preserve it. I kept journals when I was a kid. I burned them at 18. Like, I'm done. I'm an adult, gone by. Like,
well, what's interesting though is I think what you're referring to is a sort of a place-based identity, but I bet you replaced that with other communities that you wanted to belong to, like your age cohort of friends.
right.
And within that group, you probably had like, clothing you like to wear, music you like to listen, things you did as a group that are in their own way traditions too. So, there's, that concept, it's not unique to folklore, of code switching. It's like, you have multiple identities, and depending on which group you're in, you sort of emphasize and de-emphasize others. And some people do that because they have to, moving between different communities, and some people very consciously do that too. So, what's funny is that you may have thought you were stripping like traditions and things like that, but really you were sort of replacing them with one you were creating with your friends. So
yeah, that is ironic and kind of funny too. But I just, I kind of wondered, because what we have talked about that we're preserving seems like it's a throwback to that time, with the, and a lot of that has actually died off. We've lost a lot of knowledge of our heritage in just the last 20 or 30 years, especially as as our older people pass on. And in Arkansas, people die young in Atkins. Like, I've lost, and so we've lost a lot of people, not COVID, although some, but I'm just saying looking back, that heritage actually does deserve to be kept. But when I was a kid, that's not what we wanted to do at all.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I think that's sort of a marker of youth, and not even just youth, but like also kind of wanting to grow and stretch beyond the identities we sort of see for us, and want to explore other ones too. What you said that was interesting, and it's very true. Even folklorists, we have a tendency to think, oh, I'll interview someone, like I'll capture their stories later.
Yeah.
And we never know when's going to be the last time. So, if any of you are watching this and want some advice on how to like use your cell phone, for instance, to listen, to record someone telling their memories or their stories, or if you want to really dive in deep and see about our community scholars program, again, we are here to provide resources. We're not the expert, right? So if I can provide you with resources and tools to document like these stories in your communities, oh gosh, we really want to help, because it really takes us sort of doing it now rather than waiting till later. And that's kind of with the COVID pandemic, right? That's the idea of like, we don't want to kick the can down the road. Like, we need to document now. So that goes for all the people, in your community who you think are tradition bearers or have great stories,
Yeah, I totally wish I had recorded more stories from my grandfather, or my grandmother, really, and we just didn't, and now they're gone, and it's really hard to bring that back, that amount of knowledge. So, and I know NERA under archives, they have an oral storytelling program, and I really feel like there should probably be more of those, more stations or traveling or something that we could do to help preserve that kind of history in Arkansas. I'm kind of going over into the history section, but storytelling can be an art.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's certainly how we, that's one of our best ways to preserve our traditions, is to talk with tradition bearers and hear their stories, because part of it is them explaining their traditions, but also explaining what the traditions mean to them. And, I think collecting stories is almost like the core of what we do. And Arkansas is really lucky. We're not the only ones who are interested in this. We have the Pryor Center up here in Northwest Arkansas. I'm pretty sure Mosaic Templars collects stories as well. And a lot of institutions do. So, part of what I hope is that people realize, again, we're not the end. I keep saying this, but we're not the end all be all. If we can connect you to other institutions in your community, like for instance, if you're in the Pocahontas area, Eddie Mae Heron Center is going to be your expert, not me. But if I can help and provide resources and augment those things, that's great, because we want to sort of lift everybody up, all the people who are doing cool stuff around the state, and sort of make sure that we're all kind of a network together. Arkansas is strong together. So,
ooh, I like it. I'm having all kinds of ideas.
T-shirt design. Oh, I made this pin. Maybe someone else maybe has this design out there. I just did it by myself. So, but I
Oh,
did folk art, and then I did the AR to do I love folk art for
oh,
Arkansas.
that's clever. Well, do you have any tradition that you plan to do for Christmas? Anything that?
Yes, my family celebrates Christmas on Christmas Eve, and a lot of my family's in the St. Louis area. And as a kid, we were just always told Santa's got to start somewhere. But I've actually since learned that it's actually a pretty strong, I guess I could be wrong, but it's a strong German-American tradition. And we're from a German-American family in St. Louis. So we'll do Christmas on Christmas Eve. And I think Lauren posted about this on our social media about the tradition of hiding a pickle in the tree. That's something my family does, where you hide a pickle in the tree, and whoever finds the pickle, not a real pickle, but like an ornament of a pickle, whoever finds it gets to open the first present. So.
Why a pickle? Like,
I don't know. It's just a thing. It's a thing. It's funny. My family in Ohio, though, I just sort of love this. It's the perfect example of like the blending of pop culture and tradition. We actually had a Where's Waldo ornament. So we were like, it's like literal Where's rather than a pickle.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of sweet. And also I had wondered, because I do know several families that have it on Christmas Eve, but even them, they don't know why. They're just like, no, we've just always done it like that. And I'm like, okay, well, why? Don't you know? Nope, they don't know.
I mean, when you hear that, that's when your ears should be like, okay, there's a tradition going on here.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that I should have mentioned that I haven't?
No, I'll just reiterate what you'd already mentioned, though, is that I really hope that you do nominate tradition bearers and artists for the Arkansas Living Treasure Award. Again, December 20th, right? Is the deadline.
That's the deadline. And you can nominate with online, www.arkansasarts.org, and you need a recommendation letter and then 2 other recommendation letters. You can upload it to the form, and then we'll help walk you through the rest of it, because the artist will need to send us a cover letter and a bio and an example of art and that sort of thing. But we've had some really interesting ones already submitted, and I'm hopeful to see some more people who deserve to be recognized. So yeah.
Yeah, and especially with folk and traditional arts, a lot of people I find don't even a lot of people who are well deserving don't even define themselves as artists. So it's like they think their tradition isn't worthy of the recognition. So I feel like we as a community need to get out there and really like give some love to the tradition bearers and artists in our community. So
yeah, we've actually even started kind of using more of the word creative, just hoping that, creatives, hoping that you will know that, it includes crafts. It can be metalworking and knife blading, quilt making, sewing, traditional dance, anything like that. Like we're just looking for, those heritage type of creations.
Yeah, creatives is a great word. And I tend to use, if you've noticed, tradition bearer more than I do artist.
I did, but I had like an idea of a torch. Like, I just feel like it's like
you bear the tradition. Yeah.
You bear it up. I was like, okay. I tend to be a little eccentric anyway, though.
Well, we are all tradition bearers in our own way, whether we know it or not,
Well, that's terrifying.
Well, no, it's just like you said, you're like, well, I cook something this way because that's just how we've always done it. Well, you are bearing a tradition. You weren't prepared.
We don't do that. As far as food goes, my mom burnt down 3 kitchens. We didn't do, no.
You know what? It can be your tradition to always get pizza on Friday nights.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to say like to burn down the kitchen. I was like, no, that's expensive tradition.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that as a tradition. Not all traditions need to be preserved.
Not that one. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and virtually coming online. Thank you for being here. I'm so sorry. I've really enjoyed myself, and thank you for putting up with me and talking the storytelling and some I think what's so interesting about yours is not just like what you do is just not just the creative side and the creatives and the preservation, but you know, it sort of strikes a nerve, like a family nerve, like, or like it's really a sensitive and emotional topic if you really listen to it and really think about it. And I can really appreciate that. I feel like the creations, that's what art and I think crafts should be, is something that touches you emotionally and makes a difference like that. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story and telling us what you do. How can people get in contact with you before you go? Like,
yes. So again, our website is folklife.uark.edu. And all of our social media is the handle, or like the username is @AR Folklife. And then you can reach me with VD Siegel at uark.edu. That's V for Virginia, D for my D as in dog for my middle initial, which is Denise. Yeah, that might be backwards on.
well, this is sign language. It's a D. This would be F.
So right.
Yeah.
So VD Siegel, and my last name is SIEGEL at uark.edu. Please do not hesitate to reach out. We're here for you all, all our traditions are important. If there are ways we can help amplify your traditions that you think are important, we want to hear from you. So
that's great. Well, thank you. And I hope you have a happy holiday and
you
you find the pickle.
Thank you. What's funny is I do one at my house too. I live by myself, and my cat found the pickle the other day. I was like, well, guess my cat opens the first present.
Is it catnip?
No, I have got like little, just like little mouses for her every year.
Oh, those are the best. They lose them in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they lose their allure. It's like the shine wears off and then they want new ones. But that's a cat for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday and an even better Wednesday.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye to everyone at the Arts Council, everyone in the audience.